Greetings, YouTube. I apologize for the poor lighting, but I know how much everyone loves seeing Mandarin in my videos, and if I reached up to turn the light on, she would scamper away. I've read many books in my life, and in the past 15 years, they've been exclusively nonfiction. And I've entered a lot of those books with the idea that this will be an interesting read. It might give me an insight into something new. Sometimes I'll read the same topic many times from different authors, because you never know when you're going to find that perfect explanation that really brings it into light for you. Brian Greene made the best description of speed of light and how to understand it that I've ever read. And some of the books I read there aren't that great, and they never get finished. I never review them. Some are horrible, and I don't finish them, and I've mentioned those. But occasionally, a book will start out about a topic, and then it will surprise me, because it will give me an insight into myself that I wasn't expecting. Hero with a Thousand Faces, The Power of Myth, James Campbell is an awesome author. Deep Survival, the author's name I forget, The Gift of Fear, all are examples of books that helped me understand myself better. And these are books that I did not enter with the idea that they would help me understand myself better. I've read books dealing with Buddhism and psychology and cognitive behavior therapy, and I expected all of them to help me understand myself better. But sometimes a book will catch you off guard in a pleasant manner. And this right here, The Dance of Life by Edward T. Hall is one of those books. The subtitle is The Other Dimension of Time. There's a little quote on the front from the Library Journal: elegant, profound, and exciting, and I would have to agree with the journal. Now, what Mr. Hall's doing in this book is presenting you with a discussion about how different cultures view time. Now, at first that sounds kind of weird, a clock's a clock. Well, Einstein showed us that time is just how you measure it from your particular point of view. And whether you're an individual in a spaceship moving at the speed of light, or someone standing on the ground, or a culture, all these things are going to be viewing time in a different way. And some cultures are low context and some are high context. And what I mean by that is that like German and American language structure and cultures are low context. We like detail. We like things explained very explicitly. And I know this because I am American of German descent. And I would almost go so far as to say sometimes my pedantic German characteristics must be genetic. But I think they're just from my father, who's also, of course, German, and raised in a German household. I ate a lot of German food when I was a kid. And that difference between low context and high context is profound. A lot of cultures in the Mediterranean or Japan or South America are high context cultures. The Native Americans are high context cultures. There are things going on in the conversation that are not said. Pauses. The emphasis on a particular way someone says something. The context of when the thing is said, in the environment, the events that are going on. All these things are sometimes very subtle for those raised in low context cultures like America. A lot of times we're like, what just happened? Because we literally don't understand what's going on around us, because we're looking for an explanation that is not coming, because the other culture views it differently. The author brings up a number of unique terms in this dealing with time. Two of them I liked a lot were monochronic and polychronic. Now, monochronic cultures, like America, are very linear. The classic that song that you see in Warner Brother cartoons when some frantic event is going on or something. Assembly line is cranking something out. That kind of rigid we will do things in this way, and this is how we're going to measure them, and this is the metrics we're going to live by. The world of the factory that I live by every single workday is monochronic time, while polychronic time is built around the relationships of people to each other, families, business, things like that. And those are two profoundly different worldviews, monochronic and polychronic. And that sea change in worldview can be difficult for people from one of those cultures to understand the other culture. So people from a monochronic culture, such as America, sometimes have a difficult time understanding how things get done in polychronic cultures, like, say, the Native Americans or the Mediterranean, the Arab world, or South America. France, in a lot of ways, is a polychronic culture, even though it's a first world nation, because a lot of their social connections are at the middle level, not the top level, not the bottom level, but the middle structural level, like the managers and the people in the middle. Those webs of connections are important to function within the machine that is France, where in America it's top down a whole lot more. And because of this, it can make it difficult when an American businessman works in France or a French businessman works in America for us to understand how that works. Same thing with an American businessman trying to deal with Japanese businessmen, because they have a much different view of the world. Japan is a high context, polychronic society that has monochronic elements. So this is all complex. It is not easy to understand. But this has helped me understand my relationships to other people. The fact that in a polychronic society, if someone within your social circle steps up and says, I need something, you will break out of your monochronic connection. So say there's a schedule of people you have to see that day. If your brother walks up and says, James, I need this now, you will bump someone out of your schedule, even though you've made that arrangement to take care of the relationship with your brother, because that is how your culture functions. And you just assume that the person who waited for you on that schedule will understand, because they are also from the polychronic culture that you are in, at least hopefully. If you're dealing with someone that isn't, they're probably going to get annoyed. But those connections, the familial and social connections, are so important because that is how your culture functions. And that's a good thing. It's a bad thing. Just as is a monochronic culture like America, it's a good thing and a bad thing. There are mixed blessings in all of these models. And I don't think there's ever going to be one that we could pick and choose every single thing that we want from all of them and combine them together. I don't think that's achievable. We're just going to have to step back, relax, and as John Green says, think complexly about the world at large. But this book helped me understand that our relationships to each other on a familial level can have a very polychronic connection, even in a monochronic culture like ours, like mine, I should say. I have many international subscribers. Didn't mean to disrespect you there. So this is a book that I'll be keeping in my collection, not to mention it's got a very thorough bibliography and very extensive note section, though it's the notes at the end of the book. I prefer having chapter notes at the end of each chapter or at the bottom of the page that they are written on. I find that much more relevant to what I'm reading at the time. I hate having to flip to the back of the book. I just think that's bad layout design. I think it breaks the reading immersion of the person that is trying to digest the text that's in front of them. But that's just me. I will probably hear from editors that will tell me why they do it this way. But the book is not perfect. For example, I'll take Japan, for example. The author has a love affair with Japan because they are a deep, high-context, polychronic culture that has monochronic elements, so they are ripe for his understanding and examples that he uses in the book. And that's fine. There are many different things in Japan which are interesting and laudable. However, there are things within the Japanese culture that are not laudable. They have certain tendencies that can make them think and act in ways that are less than enlightened. The Japanese have had a problematic worldview when it came to racism, the LGBTQ community, and of course their involvement in World War II, which is still not really taught in an open and equal manner in Japan. There are literally generations of Japanese people that don't really have an understanding of their role in World War II because it's not really taught in the nation. And I still don't think that Japan has ever really made true amends to Korea and what happened while they invaded it. So there are good things and bad things about Japan, and I have a love-hate relationship with the culture because so much of it fascinates me. My nickname here on YouTube is a Japanese weapon. Okay, I really do have a fondness for the culture, but I understand that I have to look at it warts and all. And I think that this author, Mr. Hall, really kind of glosses over those things. Now, sometimes he does that because it isn't germane to what he's writing about, but you can't ignore these things if you're going to have a really open understanding of the culture and how they relate to time, because those cultures are functioning as a polychronic entity, but sometimes being that polychronic entity, having that immersed high context worldview can lead to negative social consequences that I just mentioned. There are no separate things here. Everything is connected. It is the warp and weft of reality that we cannot separate ourselves from. We cannot pluck a single thread from it and say, this thread is the cause of anything, because it isn't. So I really have a great deal of respect for Mr. Hall and his book, The Dance of Life. And I just blocked my face out there. Sorry about that. Should have used my other hand. I really enjoyed the book. I think that you will enjoy the book, and it's very informative, and it gives you a better understanding of time in general and how cultures view it. Mr. Hall had a lot of experience with the Native American cultures in the Pueblo region of America, and I can never say that. Pueblo. Never say that word right, so I apologize to any Native Americans or people living in the Southwest. I don't know why. My brain will just not process it. So I recommend this book. I think that it is important, and I wish that more people would read it, because I think it will help us have an understanding of why sometimes different cultures simply look at each other like in utter confusion, because we just can't quite grasp what they're doing and why they're doing it. And when we can identify that, that is the first step towards true understanding and hopefully maybe a little bit of wisdom.